Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and it is my pleasure to have Mike Wolf with us. Mike is a serial entrepreneur, real estate mentor, international speaker, and philanthropist. He's also a passive income expert and teaches people how to make money while they do what they love. He's been featured on NBC, Fox, and the TEDx stage. Mike, it's so great to have you on the show.
Hey, good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and you've been on my other show on Get Yourself Optimized talking about real estate investing. You have such powerful, sophisticated systems in place from a marketing and sales and business development standpoint. I figured I'd got to have to have you on this show too. So, and also we're friends. You were at my wedding in 2016, so it's great to see you again. And thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks again for having me, and it's always good to see you. So, it's way overdue.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's start off with a little bit of a background on how you were able to build this real estate empire and put so much on autopilot so that you can be a nomad traveling the world, doing all sorts of amazing, cool things. And give us a taste of your life.
Yeah, well, let's see. Where do we start? So, if we go way, way, way back before you were born, when I remember I was in grade 12, I had no idea what I was going to do the following year. The only thing I knew is my parents, they were always like driving into my head, you got to be a doctor or a lawyer, doctor, lawyer. That's all I ever heard. And anybody who knows me knows that I don't like blood. So doctor was off a table. And I thought, oh, well, you see those shows on TV and the lawyers are in their fancy offices. I go, that looks kind of glamorous. I think I could do that. And so I went and got my first degree. And with that came a whole bunch of student loans. So I decided, you know what, before I go get my second degree, I'm going to go and get these paid off. And I'll give you the very abbreviated version. But to make a long story short, my buddy, his mother was a manager at the phone company. So I got a job there. It was government, it was union, paid really well. And while I was there, I bought my very first home to live in. And shortly after that, my mortgage broker calls me up and goes, Mike, if you want, I could get you another mortgage if you want to buy another home. And at the time, I was like 23 years old, single, and saying, okay, well, I don't know why I need another home. But he goes, well, you buy the property, you put tenants in there, and they pay down your mortgage. And in 25 years from now, the home's paid off, it's free and clear, and that's your retirement. I thought, okay, well, that sounds cool. So I did it. And sure enough, around probably 2 years after I bought it, the market kind of did what we did during COVID, and all of a sudden things went crazy, and the prices kept going up and up and up. And all of a sudden, I was sitting on a lot of equity, especially for a starving university student who was still trying to pay off student loans. And I remember sitting in my cubicle at the phone company and thinking, okay, over the last 2 years, I made this much at the phone company, and I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's not my passion. And I made this much in real estate, and I don't even know what I'm doing. I just bought a property, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting on all this equity. And so I thought, if I did this by mistake, what would happen if I did this on purpose? And so I love telling that story only because I get a lot of people that come to me and they say, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for real estate, or I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to do well at it. It's like I didn't even have a passion for it until I got my first paycheck. And then I was hooked. Anyway, to answer the other part of your question, how did I get this lifestyle? I actually, that success actually led me down a path that eventually turned me into a workaholic because I loved what I did so much. I was so passionate about it that I pretty much focused every waking hour on it, and I got really good at it. But around me, everything else was falling apart. My bank account looked good, but my relationships were falling apart. I wasn't focusing on my health at all. And luckily, over time, I had some experiences that led me to hiring some people on my team because I had no choice. And from there, I just kind of kept scaling and kept adding more people to my team and realizing that when we give up the control a little bit, and all of us entrepreneurs, we struggle with that. And I have to admit, it didn't happen overnight. But once I gave up that control and I started to bring more people on my team and put some more systems into place, I started to get my time back. And then I could focus on other things besides just chasing the money. So these days, when I teach people how to invest, it's all about creating passive income streams, not creating a job for yourself. And if you do things right, the real estate should support you. You shouldn't have to support it.
So what sort of systems do you put in place or have you put in place you teach others to do themselves? Are these systems for hiring, systems for automating different aspects of the business, systems for quality control, for offshoring stuff? Like what sort of systems?
Well, pretty much everything. I've taken myself pretty much out of the equation almost everywhere. And so to give you some examples, I have several different businesses within real estate, and one of them is we sell rental properties to investors all over the world, and they're called turnkey properties. I mean, we've gone and bought them from the bank in bulk. We usually buy 20 or 30 or 40 homes at a time. We inspect them, we fix them, put tenants in place. Then I've got a property management team that looks after them, and then we sell those to other investors, as I mentioned. And so I've got somebody else who's schmoozing with the bankers to get us the deals. And once he gets the deals, he knows to call up the inspectors. The inspectors come in, give a full report on what needs to be fixed. The inspectors hand that off to our rehab crew that goes and fixes up the homes. Once they're nearing completion, they let the property manager know. And the property manager then starts looking for tenants. And then I've got other people that sell the properties for me. I sometimes get some sales by mistake because people call me and they want to buy them. But in general, they're sold by financial planners promote them. I've got realtors that promote them, etc. And so that's a very well, to give you an idea, we've sold 1,200 homes in the last 11 years in Atlanta alone. And that's a business with a lot of moving parts. When a lot of people come to me and go, oh, I can't find somebody good for my team, it's like you just haven't tried hard enough because there's a lot of different moving parts to that business, and yet every single thing is delegated to somebody else. And so having the teams is part one, and then having the systems is super important too, because if I didn't have those systems, I'd have people calling me up all day saying, hey, what color carpet should we put in this home? And what color paint should we have? And what appliances? So everything is systemized depending on the neighborhood. This is what we put in the home. If it's in this neighborhood, we put that in the home. And the team already knows what they need to do. And so it literally takes up almost none of my time. I'm not involved in it at all. Now, this past year, I did set up one business that does involve me, and I actually mentor students. I created something called the Wolf Pack, where I actually mentor students over Zoom. But I look at that as more of my give back project, because I actually, before COVID, I was thinking I should really record all the stuff that I've learned over the years so that my grandkids have access to that after I'm gone, which hopefully won't be for a while, but after I'm gone. And then I started to think during COVID, it gave me the bandwidth to suddenly just sit down, instead of just creating the videos, actually get an audience to be my students and that I get to mentor, and we record everything. And so once again, it's all about being creative, being efficient, and why not get paid to make those videos instead of just creating them and sitting in a room by myself bored? Why don't I have an audience that I get that are paying me? And so anyway, almost all my other businesses run without me. That one runs. Of course, I have to be there to create the content. But that I see as my give back project, because I think it's so important to teach others what you've learned. And that's, I guess, why you're doing your podcast, to teach others what you've learned. You don't want to take it to all this info to the grave with you. You need to share it.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on all the success. I'm curious, how many students do you have in the Wolf Pack?
Yeah, I've got around 70 students now, and that business, I'm not saying it to brag, but just because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening, and I know the struggle of being an entrepreneur, but we broke $1 million in revenue in 8 months during COVID, because I decided, instead of watching Netflix, to go and, hey, take this extra free time that was created for me. Well, not just for me, for everybody, I guess. We had that little pause on the radar for everybody. And I used it there's so much demand. So many people are going through transformation. And a lot of my friends were calling me up and saying, hey, Mike, my gym got shut down. My restaurant got shut down. And I thought, well, instead of teaching everybody one by one by one, why don't I just put it on Zoom? That was the birth of the Wolf Pack. And next thing you know, I started to do some events to promote it, to get more students in there. And it did extremely well. I just find that when you do the right things, and especially if you're doing it to help other people, because there were so many people struggling at that time, and they still are. But if you do things to help people, I just find that I'm kind of spiritual. I'm not religious. So I'll use the word universe. You can change that for whatever word you like. But I just find the universe just puts the right people, the right opportunities on your path when you're doing good things. And so anyway, it worked out extremely well. And now I've got a lot of, not just for me, but also my students. And I would have never built it had it not been for COVID. So there were definitely some silver linings in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So you relied quite a lot on events to do marketing and find deals and opportunities, right? I saw how we met was through Brendan Burchard and his events. And if you think about how to market in a post-COVID world or during COVID, certainly, especially, it was really not at all event-based. It was hang out in your home and don't go outside even. So how did you pivot that? Like, are you back into the event world? How reliant were you on events as a way to fill your funnels?
Well, to be honest, my real estate really funnels my lifestyle. For those or supports my lifestyle. For those who don't know me, I pretty much travel full time. I've been to 80 countries. And as a matter of fact, when I was teaching my wolf pack a couple months ago, I was on a safari in Africa, and I was waking up at 3 a.m. To do it, but I loved it. It was great. Prior to COVID, I would do like one or two events a year of my own. I'd go to other people's events, but to do my own events, I do one or two a year. And usually I take people, for example, to Houston, Texas, and I teach them to do a strategy called tax liens and deeds. And I won't go into all the details because this isn't a real estate show. But anyway, we go for 4 days. And after the 4 days, I would usually fly somewhere tropical because that's my happy place. I love to go to places with beaches and sunshine, not Canada, which is my home country. I don't deal with snow very well anymore. Anyway, I do an event, and then I go and travel somewhere, take it easy. After a little while, I might say, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to do another event, and not because of the money, just because I get bored and I love teaching real estate. So maybe 6 months later, I call up my team and say, hey, start up the marketing machine. Let's do another event in June or whatever. And then when COVID hit, I wasn't reliant on these trainings. Of course, these trainings that I did, they came to an end. They came because the auctions that I take people to were closed. Obviously, we couldn't get a bunch of people in a room. I basically, like I said, I could just see there were so many people struggling, a lot of people going through really tough times. A lot of my friends are entrepreneurs and their businesses were getting shut down and they had to reinvent themselves. And I knew that if they knew what I had up here, they wouldn't even be worried. They wouldn't be worried at all. And anyway, it wasn't really that tough to pivot because I only had to learn one thing, and that was Zoom. I like to study marketing. I'm not a marketer per se. I don't turn all the dials and trade all the stuff that you do. But I've studied it a little bit, and going to Brendan Burchard events, for example, that's a perfect example. And that's where we met, as you mentioned. And so I kind of knew the model. It's like, okay, well, we have to track people to show up on Zoom. And back then we had a pretty captive audience because people weren't doing anything. They had to take a break from Netflix to come watch what I was doing. But a lot of people are really interested. So I put on, we tried, we did 4 3-day events in 1 year. And that's how we filled up the Wolfpack. But a lot of my friends, I reached out to them and they promoted for me and they were affiliates. I went on some podcasts and gave away free tickets and or discounted tickets. And we managed to help quite a few people on those 3-day events. And then 70 of them, well, actually not 70, some of them came after I stopped doing the events, but a bunch of them said yes. And now they're working with me. And I'm just grateful that they came to me because I knew I could make a monumental difference in their lives. And like I said, it's just so many people going through a lot and still are. A lot of people are going through a lot of stuff during COVID and post-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. So somebody who's made a big difference in your life is Brendan Burchard, right? So you're very bullish on Brendan and his materials and his seminars. I think you've done, well, how many have you done of his
Well,
events?
I've been to almost every live event he's done for probably the last 11 or 12 years. And I started off as a student of his, and then I was going to every event. I just got to know his team. And I said, listen, I'm just going to be here at every event. I'm not looking to get to Brendan. I don't need him to market for me. I'm just going to be here. And if you need any help, let me know. I don't care, moving chairs, whatever you need. I'm just going to be here at these events. And they took me up on it. So I've been a volunteer now for them for probably around 9 or 10 of those years. But I don't go there just because I need a free ticket to the event. I do it to actually, I just like to give back and help and make a difference. Because somebody like Brendan had such a big impact on my life. And to be honest, I went in a little skeptical when I went to the first event. And I left there just changed in a lot of ways. Like I was already a pretty giving person, I think, but it helped me take it to a new level. And I could just see that it's okay to make a lot of money and help a lot of people, but you don't have to be embarrassed that you're making money doing it, because as Brendan says, if you don't make money, you can't sustain your message. And so it just kind of changed my mindset a little bit around a few things. And I think it made me more giving, and I'd already done some pretty big give back projects, but it made me more philanthropic. And the other thing is, it's very humbling, because in my own business, I don't do any of that stuff anymore. I'm certainly not setting up chairs at an event. I'm not putting out books. Like, it just, one, it's humbling because because I used to do that, number one. And number two, it makes me just really appreciate the people I've got on my team. I have my dream team now, pretty much every facet of my business. It makes me realize that some of those little things that they do that sometimes go unnoticed make a really big difference for me to go out and spread my message and do the things that I'm put on this earth to do. And if I had to take the time to do all those other things, I wouldn't be able to have as big an impact. And so it just makes me really grateful for the people that are on my team and that support me. And but yeah, that was definitely, it's had a really big impact on my life. And not just because of the stuff that I learned from Brendan, but just being in that environment. The people that he attracts are very similar to the people I attract, people like you. And a lot of my best friends are people that I've met at Brendan events.
Yeah. Has Brendan become a friend?
Yes, we don't. I mean, we don't hang out on the weekends or whatnot. But I just it was his birthday, end of February. I texted him, wished him a happy birthday. At the events we hang out, he's usually really like backstage. He's obviously very busy and resting. You know, he's got to protect his voice and stuff. But yeah, I do consider him a friend.
Yeah. Awesome. And you mentioned your team. How big is your team, and how many properties are they managing for you?
Well, so managing is one part of it. And my team manages, well, for me, close to 200 doors. But my team also manages properties for my clients and students. So, but the management is just one small part of it. So I've got, for example, since we're on a marketing show, we've got people do my marketing. And my main person, she lives in Frankfurt, Germany, but she oversees a bunch of people in the Philippines and in India. And I have no idea. I make it so I don't micromanage her. I just say, if you need somebody, hire them. She's looking out for my interests, and I look out for her interests, of course, too. I think the important thing, I mean, I've got a lot of people involved on fixing up the real estate, but are they on my team? Like some of these roofers, for example, well, they're not on my payroll. So it just depends on how you define team. But I've got different people that help me with various different aspects of my businesses. But I think the important thing, and one thing I want people to take away, is you don't want 1,000 people reporting to you, because then you've got a job. Now you're a micromanager, and you shouldn't be micromanaging. So I have maybe 3 or 4 people that report to me on a semi-regular basis, and I tell them only to report to me if there's something like major going on. I don't, like, if they want to start a new marketing campaign, we're going to do a bunch of ads, and you need content from me. And I'm usually, by the way, the weakest link in my organization. They're always waiting for me to. I always promise, okay, I'll make a video when I get to this city. So I'm always holding them back, and they boss me around. But yeah, I've got very few people that actually report to me. And so, for example, my property managers, they look after, like I said, a couple of hundred properties. And back in the old days, I used to manage my own properties. And when I had 5 properties that I was managing, I was way busier managing those 5 properties than I've ever been with those 200 that other people are looking after for me. But my property managers know they don't have to call me. If there's a broken appliance, fix it, replace it. If somebody's late with rent, I don't need to know. Just deal with it. If somebody dies, if there's a fire, if there's a flood, if there's something where I need to call the insurance company, well, they can phone the insurance company. But if there's something I should be aware of, let me know. But otherwise, I don't really need to know. And so that's what I call true passive income, where you can take chasing money out of the equation and you focus on the things that are really important, like spending time with your kids and grandkids. And for me, it's volunteer. I love to volunteer and give back. And I love to travel to recharge my batteries. And when you get to do all that and your business is still running just as well, if not better, than when you're there, actually it runs better than when I'm there because I just slow things down, then you've got true passive income. And so I just feel very blessed that I think I must have been Mother Teresa in my previous life, because I don't know how, I mean, over the years, it's evolved into this dream team, which certainly didn't start that way. But man, I've got such great people on my team right now that I don't have to worry about, there's almost nothing I have to worry about other than getting that content created for them when they bug me to do it. So I feel very, very fortunate. But yeah, once you have your dream team, you should not be micromanaging. You shouldn't be involved in the day to day. You should take yourself out of that and focus on what's really meaningful and what lights you up and what makes you happy. And also, of course, what leaves you fulfilled.
Yeah. So how do you get out of micromanaging? If someone listening is dealing with the weeds in their business and having to approve everything, they might feel like this is a pipe dream to them.
Yes, and I understand that because I used to be there. So I'll tell you how this all unfolded for me. So I was a solopreneur for many, many years. I've been doing what I do for 34 years. And for the first bunch of years, I did everything myself. I looked for the deals. I managed the properties. I did, if you want to call it marketing, my version of marketing, which was pretty limited. But I did everything. I remember, and as I mentioned, I'm Canadian, as you know, but not the audience might not know. And so I used to do all my real estate in Canada. But then a good friend of mine moved from Canada to Las Vegas. He is a physiotherapist or physical therapist, as you say in the US. And he got a really good job offer there. And I thought, oh, cool. I can go and hang out in Vegas. I got a free place to stay. So I would go there like once or twice a month. And unlike most people that love to go to Vegas all the time, I don't even really gamble. I'm not a big partier, but I just wanted to see my friend hang out, have some sunshine. But one addiction that I did have back then, I could not drive past an open house sign and not go in and talk to the realtors like, hey, what's going on in the market? Why are they selling? What's their motivation? That was what I had to do every time I passed an open house sign. And back in those days, I remember every time I'd go back to Vegas, the prices kept going up and up and up. And you probably remember this, all the Californians are moving to Nevada to lower their taxes and lower their cost of living. And they're doing that again now. Well, they did that a lot during COVID as well. But anyway, the prices kept going up and up. And I just realized that, hey, this is way easier than doing this in Canada. The market in Canada was really flat at that time. And I thought, this is almost too good to be true. So I started investing in Las Vegas. I reluctantly had to hire my first person. That was a property manager because I couldn't collect rent in two different countries at the same time. And so I reluctantly hired a property manager. After I hired him, though, I said, okay, if somebody's late with rent, I need to know. If an appliance breaks, I need to know. And I remember there was this one week he called me up and it was a Monday. And he goes, Mike, the stove at 123 Main Street isn't working. What should I do? Now, he knew what to do. He'd been a property manager for many years. But because I made him report everything to me, he had, I basically told him, well, if it's under a certain amount, then let's fix it. If it's over a certain amount, let's replace it. And then he called me like 3 days later. It was a Thursday, and it's a different property and different appliance. But he goes, hey, the dishwasher's broken. And after I gave him the exact same spiel, hey, if it's under a certain amount, then fix it, and over a certain amount, then replace it, I realized, okay, well, I'm not doing the work anymore. I've got somebody on my team, but I'm spending just as much time babysitting as I did doing the job. So what's the point? And not only that, he treated it like a business. If he doesn't collect rent, he doesn't get paid. And I treated my tenants as if they were friends. And that's the worst thing you can do, by the way, because tenants will call you up and they'll say, hey, Mike, I get paid on Friday. Can you wait a couple of extra days to get paid? And I go, yeah, no problem, whatever. And then Friday would come, oh, my car broke down. Can you give me another week? Sure. Next thing you know, they're 2 months behind, 4 months behind, 6 months behind. They haven't paid you a dime of rent. They're trashing your property. And anyway, it's a nightmare. My property manager, on the other hand, he would play good cop, bad cop. And he would tell the tenants, they came to him and said, hey, can you pay me? Can we pay on Friday? He'd go, hey, if it was up to me, I'd let it slide. He gets to be the good cop. But the owner, it's this grumpy old man. And of course, they don't know who I am. It's this grumpy old man. And if I don't collect rent, he's going to fire me and kick you out of the house. But if you could pay by tomorrow, I won't even tell him we had this conversation. And sure enough, they'd always come up with a rent. And so I was realizing, even though, and all us entrepreneurs do it, nobody could possibly do this as well as I do. Even though that was my mindset before, I realized he was collecting a lot more rent than I was. And even after I paid him his 10%, I was netting a lot more money without taking up any of my time. And so one of the things I like to teach people is that there's 3 phases of entrepreneurship. The first one, we usually start off as a solopreneur. We try to do everything on our own. And then we get to that breaking point where we can't possibly put in more hours. Something forces us to reluctantly hire somebody, but then we go to the micromanager phase, which is phase 2. And then And it can take a while to get out of that phase. But once you realize that there's people more qualified than you to do things, and we get out of our controlling ways as entrepreneurs, then we get to that third phase, which I call the freedom phase. And the quicker you can get there, the sooner your life will look a lot better and a lot different. You'll get your time back. And so after that, I realized, hey, well, that was a mindset thing that I thought I'm the best at all this stuff. That was all in my mind. And once I realized, hey, there's way more qualified people. And now my whole team is made up of way more qualified people than me. And that's why I do very, very little. I do the one thing I was put on this earth to do. And that is I love to inspire people and teach people about finance and how to change their financial future. That's what I'm good at. I'm not the marketing professional. I understand it, but I'm not the expert like you are. I'm not the expert at fixing homes. I'm not the expert at managing properties. And so once I came to that conclusion and realization, then I started to get out of my own way and started to find the right people for the right positions. And over time, didn't start off that way, but over time it's evolved into me having just the right people, and they've got my back. And I think the other part of that equation, though, is you have to also have their back. When you start taking care of the people on your team and start to look out for their well-being, and if you've got their back, they'll have your back too. That's what it's morphed into over many years. But if I could go back to my younger self, I would have said, quit trying to, don't be a control freak right from day one. And I probably would have hired a property manager right from day one, very first property. But anyway, can't go back, but that's what I would do.
Yeah, so you rely very heavily on your dream team. Are there some unconventional ways to find these amazing people? Some of the kind of best tips and tricks that you recommend to your students, for example?
Yeah, well, these days it's so easy compared to the olden days because we have so much information online. We can read reviews on people. We can read reviews on businesses. So that's number one. And a lot of people think it's so much harder to find a team than it is. A players hang out with A players. If you find, like in the real estate industry, if I find somebody who's an amazing property manager, well, he's already going to be connected to really good contractors. He's not going to hire some random people, and he's also not going to, be working with people that suck. And so sometimes you just find that one person, and they've already got the team built. They've already got the systems in place. So that's number one. Number two, there's for real estate, once again, there's a whole bunch of real estate investment clubs. And if I went to a brand new city, we'll use Miami since you're there. If I started to invest in Miami, I would either start showing up at meetings, or a lot of things are over Zoom these days. I'd show up on Zoom and interact with the people there. And I find the most successful people, they're not scarcity minded, they're abundance minded, and they're not afraid to tell you hey, I use this roofer, he's really good, or I use this property manager, he's really good. They're going to be happy to share resources with you. And then the other part of it is, after a while, so that's when you're first starting. After a while, when you've been in the industry for a while and you kind of have a reputation for what you do in a good way, it's kind of like if you win the Super Bowl, everybody wants to be on your team. And so I get a lot of people that approach me when I'm not even necessarily hiring, saying, hey, how do I get involved with you? And people will bend over backwards to be on the Super Bowl winning team. So that's what you have to look forward to. But when you start, you got to start somewhere. But yeah, just ask other people in your industry who's good. And like I said, the most successful people are almost always abundance minded.
Yep, that's very true. And as you said earlier, the universe does have your back. It
100%.
conspires to make your dreams come true as long as you're in a positive and faith-minded place.
I agree. And I think, a lot of it, if you look back to The Secret, and The Secret had a lot of great things because it brought law of attraction more into the mainstream. But one of the problems is, after watching it, you feel like, hey, I can just sit on the sofa and think about money and eat Doritos and the money is going to come. No, you got to take action. That's part of the word attraction, is action. You got to take action. And I think if you make 5% of the effort, the universe will come into play and help you with the other 95%. And I look back at when I first started, I could have never dreamed that I'd be doing some of the things that I'm doing today. It wasn't even on my radar. If you just said, what is your wildest dream? It wouldn't even be as good as what's going on. But when I look back on how I built it, like, it wasn't all it's not because I'm that smart. It's not because I work that hard. It's just, I always did take action. I always, when I made a mistake, I would correct it and find a different way forward. And I just keep positive, keep feeling positive, and eventually it just all falls into place. So if you're one of those people that right now is maybe struggling to build a business, or it gets easier, but you just have to keep going and don't give up and keep the faith for sure.
What will be a few examples of synchronicities or without a doubt signs that you're getting collaboration and assistance from the upper worlds?
Oh man, I've had so many, just where where you get stuck on something and then suddenly the person appears that has the answers to your questions. My Atlanta project, like I said, we've sold 1,200 homes there. Well, I have a partner who I was speaking at an event in Toronto, and he sent somebody from his team to speak in Toronto instead of him, and I became friends with this person. And next thing you know, as a result of that chance meeting, now I ended up, working with somebody in Atlanta who I'd never met before, and like I said, we went on to sell well over 1,000 properties, but it was just because I showed up at an event and spoke there. And but I have that happen all the time. I just find when I go somewhere and if I go to a Brendan Burchard event and I'm networking, somebody there is going to have a solution to something that I'm stuck at. But it happens all the time. It happens so often. My background, by the way, when I was going to university, I mentioned I was going to be a lawyer, but there's no pre-law program at the university I went to, so I had to get a degree in something else. And I got a degree in psychology. And when you study the sciences, they always teach you the scientific method. And the scientific method basically says that if you can't prove it, you can't say that it's true or that it exists. Well, when I look at some of the things that have happened to me in my life that were coincidence, the science would call coincidence. Well, to me, it'd be like winning the lottery 100 times in a row. It's like so obvious there's something much bigger than us out there that I think helps us. I think life happens for us, not to us. And even some of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life, they always turned out to be the best things that ever happened to me in the long run. But yeah, I've had so many, and I think once again, it's just showing up. Just keep going forward, stay positive, keep showing up, and the right people will appear. The right opportunities will appear when you least expect it.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. It is so true. I'm curious if synchronicities were in play when you got your TEDx speaking gigs and
100%.
TV appearances. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so well, I'll talk about TEDx for a second. I was actually teaching. I was teaching doing one of my 3-day online Zoom trainings during COVID, and one of the people in the audience. My real estate training is a lot different than anybody else's. I bring a lot of spirituality in. I bring a lot of mindset in, a lot of personal development. It's not just, hey, here's how you do the strategy, go make money. To me, it's much big. It's much more holistic. And my goal is for everybody to have happiness and fulfillment. And that's all disguised as a real estate course. But anyway, when she was tuned in, she was just really liking a lot of the content that I had on there. She goes, man, you would be so good on the TED stage. And I'm actually speaking at this TED event in Las Vegas. If you want, I could give you an intro to the organizer of the event. It wasn't really on my bucket list, but certainly not something you say no to, getting asked to be on the TEDx stage. And so, of course, I said yes. The next thing you know, I'm flying to Vegas, but it happened just because I showed up to do my real estate training. Nothing to do with that, but that happens all the time. And a lot of times I'll be on your podcast, for example. Somebody will reach out to me. It might be a year from now, even I might have forgotten exactly what I said, and they'll go, "Oh, I really liked what you said on the Marketing Speak podcast. Can you come speak on my podcast, or can I interview you?" I mean, so just showing up and saying yes to things. And I say yes, by the way. I never ever ask, well, how big is your audience? I'm only going to speak on your podcast if you have 10,000. I never do that. I remember I did this one event, and it was in Toronto, and it was like major snowstorm, and the roads were like really crappy. And I don't live in Toronto, so I was staying at the hotel where the event was. So I thought, well, I might as well still do it. I'm here. And literally one person showed up, and I still did the event. And they ended up working with me. So you just never know. If you can change one person's life, it was worth it. And so, but I never ask, how big is your audience? How big is your list? I just show up. If somebody asks me to do something, of course I'm going to say yes, and I just keep showing up, and the universe keeps rewarding me. So
Yeah. One thing I learned that I think you're going to appreciate is this was from Anne Marie Pizarro, who is an Akashic Records reader. I had her on my other show, Get Yourself Optimized. I've gotten many readings from her, so has my wife Orion. One thing she said that really stuck for me was, you don't have clients, you have an assigned group. What
powerful.
that means is you're destined to be working with these people. That person, that one person who showed up in Toronto at that event during the snowstorm, was destined to work with you. It was already written.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and I totally believe that. I think everything happens, for a reason, and it's always a good reason. So, yeah, I just think that's part of it. It's just it would have been very easy for me just to say, "Hey, the roads are bad. Let's just cancel the whole thing." And in all honesty, even if I wasn't staying at the hotel where that event was, I would have still. If I knew there was one person showing up, I would have shown up. And I think, I know you're writing another book right now. Congrats on that. But to me, if that one person that needs to read that on any given day gets that in their hands and it changes their life, it was so worth it. And I had an experience like that. Back in the last recession, I used to have a company called Foreclosure Fixers, and instead of sending out those postcards that say we buy homes and we'll pay cash for your home, we buy ugly homes, I sent out something that said I can help stop the foreclosure. Now, in all honesty, in a lot of cases I could stop the foreclosure, in some cases I couldn't. And so this one lady who got my marketing flyer, what I would do for the people who I couldn't help them stay in their home, I would do what I call give them a soft landing. So I would buy their home from them, but I'd make sure they had enough money for a damage deposit and moving expenses and a few months rent and money for food. I didn't want to leave them desolate. Anyway, so I helped her get into something. She probably would have been on the streets, in all honesty, had the bank taken the home away from her. Probably a year or two later, when she was on her way back up, she's kind of rebuilding. Because I always give people advice: hey, here's how you can get back into home ownership. Let me know if I can help you. Here's how you can rebuild your credit. And so she called me up around a year or two later, and I remember she told me that the day I got your marketing flyer, I was thinking of killing myself that day. And it's like, when you hear stories like that, you don't know who needs your help. You don't know. And I'll take that one person. I would do that business all over again just to help that one person. Because if you can change one person's life, like, it's magical. And so yes, I will show up for, if you had zero listeners, I'll still show up, because somebody down the road is eventually going to hear. I'm sure you have lots of listeners, but if you write that book and nobody buys it except your mom and one person, still, it's if you can change somebody's life, it's all worth it. And so I never measure things in terms of how big is your list. And anyway, and I think that's one of the reasons for my success. And I know other people that have a similar mindset to that, and once again, things always seem to fall into place for them. So I think it's your mindset and how you show up on this planet, and also not doing things just for yourself and for what's in it for you. It's what's in it for the other person on the other side of that transaction.
Yeah, amazing. And when you said that that woman was thinking of killing herself on the day that she got your flyer, I got goosebumps like that. Angel bumps. Yes. Not,
I still feel like crying every time I tell people that, but yeah, and that's one of the reasons also why I wanted to create this video content for my grandkids, because financial literacy isn't really taught in schools. Entrepreneurship, anyway, all the stuff that I've become good at, I had to learn on my own. It wasn't offered to me in the curriculum. I learned how to square dance in grade 3, which certainly comes in handy almost every day. But other than that, um, almost everything that's really made my life what it is, I had to go figure it on my own. And I want to share it with the world.
yeah. Did that woman keep in touch with you, or did you keep in touch
I
with
haven't
her?
spoken to her in a long time, but I should actually reach out to her, see how she's doing. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah, good idea. Let me know what she says.
Yeah, that's like I should have done that a while ago, actually.
Oh, well, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time's
That's right.
today.
So true. So true.
Yeah. So, what would be some of the more unconventional bits of wisdom that you've collected over the years that you haven't already shared on this episode that our listener would really benefit from?
Unconventional wisdom. I think just the biggest thing is don't listen to everybody else. If you're an entrepreneur, I'm guessing if somebody's watching this, they're probably an entrepreneur in most likelihood. And, especially if you're just starting out, you're going to have these voices in your head saying, who am I to think that I'm whatever? And all the people around you are going to be negative. And when I first started in real estate, everybody told me I was going to fail. And you got to remember, I was super young. I wasn't that confident back then. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew I could figure it out. And everybody told me, "Oh, you're never going to make it. And real estate's a dog eat dog business, etc." And so I didn't listen to them. I didn't listen to the voices in my head. You can control those, by the way. You can get good at that. But now it's interesting because a lot of the people who told me that I couldn't are now my clients and they come to me for advice. So I think the biggest thing, and I don't even know if I would call it unconventional or not, but just don't let anybody else squash your dreams. If you have something that you're passionate about, just go for it and make it happen. And like I said, you just have to do a little bit of the work and the universe will do most of it for you anyway. But you have to show up. You have to show up. You have to take some action, move forward just a little bit every day. And you'll be surprised what can happen. Like I said, the stuff, my life today wasn't even imaginable to me. Like if somebody told me that, hey, in 30 years, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to travel the world full time and you're going to do what you love every single day. I would not have believed that was possible for me. I never really had this big vision. I just took every day as it came and just moved myself a little bit forward and a little bit forward and a little bit forward. And eventually those small steps compound and big things start to happen. People maybe were naysayers before, they start to notice you, and great things unfold. But don't let somebody else squash your dream.
Yeah, yeah. Don't listen to the naysayers, but also don't hate them either, because they're all just messengers of God to help us course correct and stay on our path. So,
Well, for me, I actually use that to propel myself. I'm one of those people that if somebody tells me I can't do something, I almost want to show them that they're wrong. I want to prove to them. So I actually use that as fuel to push myself further. The fact that they were saying I wasn't going to make it, as opposed to letting
I'm
it
I'm pretty sure you're not going
stop
to be able to make this episode be the highest viewed and listened to episode in the history of marketing speak.
me. There you go. Well, we can do that. You'll see. Well, you'll see.
You just wait, Stefan. Bring it. That's fun. So if you had to look back on the one of the worst moments in your life and how it turned into one of the biggest gifts, what would it be?
Well, I think the one that stands out for me is, so back in the day I was extremely good at real estate. I had the my bank account was pretty impressive. My home, I had a big home, fancy car. I had all the things that most people think are, I guess, success in most people's minds. And I wouldn't say I was miserable, but there was always something missing. And anyway, sometimes the universe will give you some lessons. And I remember I used to get gout all the time. And I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's a form of arthritis, usually goes to your feet. Anyway, I've been dealing with it for years and years and years. It's something that keeps coming back. And when I first got it, I was 28 years old. It comes from, if your kidneys aren't good at processing the protein from meat, for example, and you're a meat eater, which I used to be, eventually it forms these uric acid crystals. They flow through your body and usually end up in your feet. Anyway, I used to get attacks once a year. Then they became twice a year. Then they became 3 times a year. And I ended up around 11, 12 years ago now in a wheelchair because my left foot was twice the size of my right foot and I couldn't walk. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said what I knew she was going to say. She goes, if you don't give up meat, you're never going to walk again. And if you give up meat, you have maybe a 20% chance that you're going to get out of this wheelchair. And to me, that was just a wake up call because I was so good at making money and I was, so good at some of the stuff that I did, but I was so dumb when it came to my health. And I wasn't focused. I didn't have balance in my life. And so that day I actually quit eating meat. I'm not preaching to anybody, by the way, because I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for that. But that was one of the best things that ever happened to me because obviously I'm not only am I walking, but now when I travel, I like to put myself in the middle of the city and walk everywhere and just take advantage of the fact and be grateful that I can walk. So it's just a wake up call that sometimes you get really good at something and you think your life is like perfect. And then you realize that you're missing some other things in that balance. And so, had that not happened, I'd probably still be suffering with sore feet all the time and not able to walk a lot of the time. And I'm a lot healthier now as a result of that. Really, at the time, like the worst, it felt like the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And now I see it as such a big blessing in disguise.
Yeah, yeah. The way Ryan puts it, my wife, it's the gift. Sometimes the bow is on the bottom. Yeah,
So true. That is a great, I never heard that before. I love that.
yeah. One thing that comes to mind as we wrap up this episode, and you shared your story, is a book called "The Body Keeps the Score." It's number 6 on Amazon this week, and it is an incredible book about how we store trauma in the body. And also, if you think about what is the spiritual root of a particular ailment, illness, chronic pain, a lot of times it is something that needs to be corrected in the kind of your spiritual work. And for you, it sounds like one of the things that was a spiritual decision was to stop eating meat, which I don't eat meat either and haven't for, I don't know, 15 years at least. But and I'm not preaching either because my my wife is a carnivore and I don't give her any grief over that. It's just,
They'll kick you out.
everybody
You
has their
better
own
not.
path.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
but the concept of looking at your body as a clue to what you need to work on,
Hmm.
and it could even be past life related. I think that's really, really a critical point.
Yeah, I'm going to get that book. I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if our listener or viewer wants to join the wolf pack, if they want to follow you, learn from you, anything that would be related to your entrepreneurial journey or real estate or anything like that, where should we send them?
Yeah, just reach out, email me at info@mikewolfmastery.com, info@mikewolfmastery.com, or check out my website, mikewolfmastery.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. It was so great to see you again and have you on the show. And thank you for everything that you do and for the light you are in the world.
It's great to see you too, and I am going to come visit you in person very, very soon.
I look forward to that. And I look forward to you, listener, getting out there in the world, making a difference for your people. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.